Yes, sir. Good morning to you. Yes, sir. Jesus is Lord. The word works. And I'm a working it and I'm receiving. And I may be the only one receiving, but I'm going to get mine. We're going to go over here to the fifth chapter of the Gospel of Mark. A couple of people received from God. Now, there's multitudes around him, but only two received. But I like to call this how I can receive from God anywhere at any time. I don't have to do without. It doesn't matter what other people do. It doesn't matter whether other people get theirs or not. I'm going to get mine. So in verse 21 of Mark chapter 5, watch this. He said, when Jesus passed over to the other side, very important phrase here, much people. How many is much? I don't know. Innumerable crowd. Here in the South, we use the term bukus. You go out in a big old wasp nest hanging down from the, eave of the house, the barn, and whoo, how many wasps of it? Several hundred. You say, man, bukus, and you don't mess with those things. You get away. Bukus of wasps, leave them alone. Bukus of people were gathered unto him, and he was nigh unto the sea. Now watch, one important person and one not so important person. And behold, there cometh one of the rulers of the synagogue, one of the chief priests, everybody knew him, came to the rulers of the synagogue, Jairus by name, and when he saw him, he fell at his feet. Now watch this. And besought him greatly, saying, whoo, big word there. If you're going to beseech God, you're going to do it by saying. Somebody says, I have an unspoken prayer request. Well, you're going to get an unspoken answer. It says, let your request be made known unto God. And religious people always say, well, God knows what I need. He sure does. But he's going to let you just make the demand on when you get it. Not only the when, but the what and the where. Now, you got to see these things. Multitude of people, bukus of people, thronging Jesus, crowd following him around. Now, there's got to be needs in that crowd. Now, watch this. Jesus is not moved by the need. He's moved only by your faith. I remember one time years ago, a good friend of mine, James Warren, I'm not even sure he's still alive, but he was in our church, and he was preaching at one of these down the road, mission kind of places where all the bad drunks was hanging around, the people that didn't have a job and didn't have much of anything else going for them. And he's down there preaching. So to make an example, when he said to somebody, he said, look, I got a $10 bill here and would like to give it to somebody. Nobody got up, nobody requested it. And so somebody that went with him, another guy from the church that had gone with him, after a few minutes of him trying to get people to take that $10 bill, got up and said, man, I'll take it. And boy, he took it and sat down. All them old drunks and folks sitting down there said, wow, that's wrong. He don't need it and he don't deserve it. We do. But they didn't get it. I got to run that one by you again. See, the guy that got it didn't really need it, but the guy that got it got up and got it or took it. Faith is like that. Faith takes, faith receives. And so you might be sitting there bad, sick, needing healing and wonder why God didn't heal you because you didn't ask him for it, because you didn't claim it, because you said, well, God knows what I need, or I have an unspoken prayer request. No, you don't. If you have an unspoken prayer request, you ain't got a prayer request. And if Jesus was moved by the need, he wouldn't be here in the United States of America. He'd be over in China or Indonesia or Vietnam or Africa. Where people are sick and dying by all kinds of disease. He's not moved by the need. He's moved by faith and somebody drawing on that demand or making a demand on him. Jairus, important individual, came to him and besought him greatly. Watch this. How do I beseech God greatly? Well, it's real plain. And besought him greatly, saying, you're going to have to say something and say it out loud, saying, my little daughter lieth at the point of death. I pray thee, or I ask thee, or I make a request, or I used this term one time in a church, made some folks mad, made a demand on thee, I pray thee, come and lay thy hands on her, and she shall, watch, and she may be healed, and she shall live. That's the key verse. She shall live. Now watch. Don't get mad at me. Jesus went with him. Jesus went with the one that made the demand. Jesus went with the one that had faith. Jesus went with the one that said. So somebody said, well, God just always meets my needs. No, he meets the needs of the person that asks. And I'm going to say it. If anybody ever becomes, a multimillionaire, it's going to be Frank, because I'm in the family of God and I have the blessings of Abraham. If anybody gets his prayer request, and I've got a few for today. I've got some things going on today. I'm not going to tell you about it because I've never seen the righteous forsaken nor his seed begging. So I don't share my needs with anybody. I go to God. And so can you. But watch. But don't get upset at me because I'm over 70 and walking in divine health, and I look pretty good too for my age, by the way. And that Pat and I have been married 55 years, and we're on a honeymoon. In fact, we're going on a little trip today, and we're going to hold hands the whole way there, and we're going to hold hands on the way back. And she's going to say, hey, baby, I love you. And I'm going to say, baby, I love you. And I'm going to look over at her and say, whoo, let's stop on the way home. We're in love, having a great time. Somebody says, well, I don't have that kind of marriage. You can have if you do what the Word says. Somebody says, well, I'm not walking in divine health. You can if you do what the Word says. Somebody says, well, I don't have enough money to make a trip. You can if you'll beseech God greatly by saying. So I'm going to run a little over. The ministry of Jesus when he was here on the earth was controlled by the faith of people. Jairus said, come go with me. The centurion said, just saying a word. You don't have to go. I don't consider myself worthy, but if you're just saying a word, my servant will be healed. The woman with the issue of blood, which we're going to look at here in a couple of days, she went to Jesus and touched his garment, and Jesus turned about and said, who touched me? She touched him in faith, and there was a multitude thronging him. And the disciples said, Lord, you say who touched me? Well, look at the multitude touching you. But she touched him in faith, and she received. Those three people received. Blind Bartimaeus cried out the louder and said, Lord, have mercy. And Jesus stood still and said, what do you want? So in the New Testament, his ministry was controlled by people. Well, I'm under the New Testament, and his ministry is controlled by people, and he's going to touch me today. He's going to bless me today. If anybody gets a financial miracle today, it's going to be Frank. It's going to be me. And if anybody walks in divine health, it's going to be me. And when we leave in a little while to go on that trip, I'm going to stop either at Cracker Barrel or Waffle House, and they're going to hand me a menu. And when they do, the waitress is going to stand there and say, well, what would you like to have, sir? And Pat and I are going to order what we want. Well, hey, this is the menu. This is the menu, and the angels of God are saying, what do you want? And it's my choice, your choice. Have a great day. Remember, all day long, Jesus is Lord. Thank God the Word works.